Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda, and please welcome to our Operation Freedom platform, WeThePeopleProcessing.com. You know, are you tired of being threatened to be canceled just because you have a company focused on liberty and freedom? Well, worry no more, folks. WeThePeopleProcessing.com is your go-to merchant services, freedom-based company to provide business service payment solutions. We the People Processing provides their clients a cancel culture-free platform which is domestically based. They provide competitive rates, no contracts with next-day funding, a fully vetted and like-minded financial infrastructure, and full support for integrations, implementation, and e-commerce efforts. Bottom line, WeThePeopleProcessing.com focuses on defending your company's free market growth, values, and future. Check them out at www.WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Once you're on the site, enter in password Operation Freedom or call 855-499-2024. That's WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Then, when on the website, enter Operation Freedom as your password or call 855-499-2024. Welcome back to Operation Freedom, folks. I'm Dr. Dave Janda, broadcasting from our ancillary bunker linked to our main freedom bunker in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. We're here every Sunday for you live from 2 to 5 Eastern, but also available 24/7 at davejanda.com. We hope you'll come by and visit. At a minimum, we got a tremendous amount of free public information. But real in-depth content with in-depth analysis to put you even further ahead of the globalist constructed curve that ends in a brick wall with the shattering of your freedoms and liberties is on the subscription side. Because there are things I can discuss on a subscription platform that I cannot discuss on the radio or in social media or on any other platform. That's why it exists. We hope you become part of our freedom family. You know, the New World Order crowd, the criminal international banking syndicate, the deep state, the globalist thugs, the thugocracy, whatever you want to call them, they want you to believe that they have it all under control, and that they're all powerful, and that freedom and everyone who supports freedom is going to lose. Well, that's the mirage that they've created, folks. It's all smoke and mirrors. You see, folks, there are changes happening. And I know some of them aren't so great. I get it. I don't feed on hopium. When you've been a surgeon, and a surgeon for 32 years, you have to be the first person in the room to identify a cancer. And you have to also be the first person in the room to identify viable and healthy tissue. And then you have to have the ability to cut the cancer out and leave as much viable tissue as there is. The deep state is cancer. Freedom is viable tissue. And I can tell you with certainty that the viable tissue is pushing out and pushing away that malignancy called the deep state, the New World Order crowd. And they're desperate and they're panicked. And they're getting cuffed. In some cases, handcuffed. In some other cases, imaginary handcuffs. Did you see AOC and Tlaib this week? They were protesting the Supreme Court decision outside the Supreme Court, which, by the way, is a violation of federal law. And we've talked about that at length. Not just outside the justices' houses, which is also a violation of the law, but demonstrating outside of the Supreme Court that could well influence a member of the court or someone who works the court is a violation of a federal statute. I kid you not. True. And we've talked about that at length. But AOC this week and Omar, they got, if you will, taken for a little walk by the police because of their protests, and they put their hands behind their back as if they were handcuffed, but they weren't. And they got so into the moment about their imaginary handcuffs, they actually brought their hands up and to cheer the crowd on, only to realize, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be handcuffed. But the handcuffs on the people that run the deep state are not imaginary, like the imaginary handcuffs on their little tool puppets like AOC and Omar. No. The powers that be, or the powers that soon to be were, are in fact handcuffed. Not imaginary. Real. Why do I say that? Because there are people, too small a number, by the way, but there are people on the inside that are bringing the deep state system down. Just in the past month and a half, there have been a number of decisions from the United States Supreme Court that the globalists thought they owned and operated because they owned and operated the Chief Justice, Justice Roberts. But something happened. And I believe there are two people on the inside and a number that help them, people that help them, that have turned the tables internally within the Supreme Court. And the person that has made, I believe, the biggest difference is an individual who was targeted by the syndicate over 30 years ago when he was nominated to the Supreme Court. They tried to pin some false charges on him because their hope was that they could blow up these false charges, very similar to what they did with Kavanaugh, and have him cave to walk away, because 99.9% of people walk away from confrontation. There are a few of us that actually thrive on confrontation. In fact, are disappointed if we don't have confrontation. Clarence Thomas is one of those individuals who thrives on confrontation. And Joe Biden, that was leading the charge against him in the Senate, felt that he could put enough heat on Clarence Thomas and get him out of there because, you know what? This guy focuses on freedom. And somewhere down the line, there are going to be some cases that come in front of the Supreme Court, and we don't want his voice heard, and we don't want his voice and vote to take our deep state operation down. Well, it took 31 years, but it happened. Let's go back to the origins of Joe Biden and the globalist thugs, how they tried to take him down. This is a clip, you've heard it before, but you're going to hear it again because it is so inspirational, and hopefully it'll move the needle for you to get you off your couch and be a little bit more like Clarence and a little less like a couch potato. Orrin Hatch, a Republican from Utah at the time, was friendly toward Thomas, but was concerned that Biden and his thugs were going to win the day and Clarence Thomas was going to back down from being a freedom fighter. And this is the interchange that occurred. Derek, hit it.
Some people have been spreading the rumor that perhaps you're going to withdraw. What's Clarence Thomas going to do?
I'd rather die than withdraw. If they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process. Not for the purpose of serving on the Supreme Court, but for the purpose of not being driven out of this process. I would not be scared. I don't like bullies. I've never run from bullies. I never cry uncle, and I'm not going to cry uncle today, whether I want to be on the Supreme Court or not.
As he said those words, he was staring down Joe Biden and the other totalitarian thugs that wanted to block him from sitting on the court. They wanted to block him, as I mentioned, because they were worried what would happen in the future, and as he gained seniority on the court, he could well influence other justices. Well, they were right. Because in 2022, Clarence Thomas, with I believe the help of Alito, another justice, took the Constitution to Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett, and Judas Roberts, and said, enough. It's time for the Constitution to prevail. They did that in the number of decisions that came through this past month, and there's some other ones that are in the process of making its way through the snake that the deep state fears. But the one I want to talk about is not the Dobbs, Mississippi case that did not, one more time, did not abolish abortions. What it did is it sent the decisions for abortions back to each state. The decision I want to talk to you about is the one that has petrified and put in handcuffs the deep state syndicate. And that is West Virginia versus the EPA. In a nutshell, folks, it gutted the deep state globalist syndicate. Not just the EPA that's mentioned in the lawsuit title, but every globalist-directed federal agency. And the person that, as I understand it, was most responsible for that to happen was the guy you just heard take on Joe Biden and the thugs in October of 1991. You see, folks, this decision that was a 6-3 decision, the three being the globalists, appointed through either Obama or Clinton. The 6-3 decision, I believe, in many years to come, will be seen as the event, legally, which stopped the syndicate in their tracks. Why? Because that decision destroys the regulatory mafia bureaucrats, also known as the Senior Executive Service. I've talked to you about that level in years. It is the level, and it's huge, in each agency, in each department, that is made of, comprised of unelected, unaccountable, globalist scumbags who inflict coercive dictates on the public. They are there for their entire careers, never to be touched. And how do you know that these people have all this power? Well, if If the goat rodeo directed by the senior executive service thugs over the last 3 years doesn't convince you of the enormity of them being gutted and this decision, I believe nothing will. The EPA, the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, the FCC, just to name a few, were gutted by that decision and put in handcuffs by the court. The decision essentially states that Congress, not the agencies comprised of unelected, unaccountable, globalist bureaucrats, Congress has the power, not the syndicate, not the senior executive service level scum, to impose rules and regulations. This is huge, folks. It's an enormous decision for freedom. And it just didn't happen overnight. This has been on the launch pad for over 40 years. I can attest to it. In 1988, when I first went to work on healthcare policy in D.C. as a consultant to the Reagan administration, when I first went to the White House, I was brought into an orientation room. And one of President Reagan's most trusted aides came in to present to us. And what she said was, "You are here to present, to develop policy and present policy to President Reagan. That policy should never be viewed as being on the right-left axis, because the right-left axis is pure theater. It is meant to divide and conquer our country and our population. The axis you work on is not the right-left axis. Your policy should work on the up and down axis, up being freedom and blocking the down axis, that being those in government, those in industry, those in society, those around the world that want to strip people of their freedom and their liberty and their lives." Now, she never said deep state, she never said globalist syndicate, but that's what she was talking about. How do I know that was actually Ronald Reagan's philosophy? Let me play a clip for you from Ronald Reagan. He was campaigning for Barry Goldwater in 1964. Here are his words, not an aide's words. Here are his words from that very speech. Derek hit it.
This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Now, it doesn't require expropriation or confiscation of private property or business to impose socialism on a people. What does it mean whether you hold the deed to or the title to your business or property if the government holds the power of life and death over that business or property? And such machinery already exists. The government can find some charge to bring against any concern it chooses to prosecute. Every businessman has his own tale of harassment. Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right, Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. In this vote harvesting time, they use terms like the Great Society, or as we were told a few days ago by the President, we must accept a greater government activity in the affairs of the people. But they've been a little more explicit in the past, and among themselves, and all of the things I now will quote have appeared in print. These are not Republican accusations. For example, they have voices that say the Cold War will end through our acceptance of a not undemocratic socialism. Another voice says the profit motive has become outmoded. It must be replaced by the incentives of the welfare state. Or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 20th century. Senator Fulbright has said at Stanford University that the Constitution is outmoded. He referred to the President as our moral teacher and our leader, and he says he is hobbled in his task by the restrictions of power imposed on him by this antiquated document. He must be freed so that he can do for us what he knows is best. And Senator Clark of Pennsylvania, another articulate spokesman, defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. Well, I, for one, resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses. This is a term we haven't applied to ourselves in America. But beyond that, the full power of centralized government, this was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those Founding Fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy.
And that is why they are desperate and panicked, and why they are handcuffed. Because that decision, as President Reagan alluded to so many years ago, it cuts at the heart of the syndicate. They are all about centralization of power so that they can control the very top of the puppet leadership. That decision, West Virginia versus EPA, led by Clarence Thomas, was about decentralization of power. This is why AOC is out there screaming that this is a coup and calls for the Supreme Court to be done away with. This is why Lori Lightfoot, the incompetent mayor of Chicago, is screaming F Clarence Thomas. It's why the four-time jabbed, now COVID-ridden Biden and Fauci and their globalist thugs, well, they thought they were sick earlier today or earlier this month. But with this decision, they were just put in hospice care because their centralization globalist operation has come to an end. And now it's been announced that the Supreme Court is hearing a case that could give state legislatures, not judges,